Good evening. I'm Gail Hodges, a member of the Board of Governors of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I also chair the Fiber and Materials Studies Council at SAIC. And on behalf of the Board of Governors and the Council, I welcome you to this lecture by Rona Pondick, taking place during the celebration of SAIC's 150th anniversary. As you can see here, this lecture is presented and co-sponsored by the Visiting Artists Program and the William Bronson and Gracie Slavin Mitchell Lectureship in the Department of Fiber and Materials Studies. Since 1866, SAIC has been a leader in educating the world's most influential artists, designers, and scholars. Today, SAIC is one of the largest accredited colleges of art and design in the country. We provide undergraduate, graduate, and post-baccalaureate programs to more than 3,500 students. Throughout its 150-year history, SAIC has redefined the cultural landscape and influenced contemporary art and design throughout the world. Thank you for being here this evening to share our Visiting Artists Program series. Now, to introduce you to our speaker, Rona Pondick, I call on Terry Myers, Professor and Chair of the Department of Painting and Drawing.
Thank you, Gail. First thing I want to add is that I'm on Andrea Green's Visiting Artists Program Committee, so one of the mandates for the 150th year was to bring, I guess, what we could call alums of the VAP program back. So Rona actually first spoke for the Visiting Artists Program in 1992, so she qualified, she fit that category for us. So I wasn't here then, but I knew her then. So here we go. So since the late 1980s, Rona Pondick has had more than 40 solo exhibitions at galleries and museums, including Sonnabend Gallery in New York, Gallery Tadeusz Ropak in Paris and Salzburg, Akira Ikeda Gallery in Tara, Japan, Cramp Gallery in Istanbul, the Worcester Art Museum in Massachusetts, the Museum of Contemporary Art Cleveland, the Groninger Museum in the Netherlands, the Brooklyn Museum in New York, the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and the ICA in Boston. She has also participated in numerous, probably hundreds at this point, group exhibitions worldwide, including the Whitney Biennial, and the Lyon, Johannesburg, and Venice Biennales, and her work has been acquired by more than 35 public institutions, including the Carnegie Museum of Art in Pittsburgh, the Musée National d'Art Moderne at Centre Pompidou in Paris, the Fogg Art Museum at Harvard, the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, the LA County Museum of Art, the Met in New York, MoCA in LA, the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., the Philadelphia Museum, and the Whitney Museum in New York. I thought I would start my part of this introduction with a moment from an interview that Rona did with Phong Bui for the Brooklyn Rail in 2013. The entire interview is an important read, but I thought the following exchange will get us all in the right frame of mind for what's to come. After speaking about the importance and influence of Kafka's Metamorphosis, Phong said the following to Rona. Now that we're on the Kafka trail, I thought you gave a terrific answer on a panel of artists who were in the Whitney Biennial in 1991. Someone asked you how the motif of teeth emerges in your work, and you said in addition to teeth being sexual, every time you're angry at somebody, you just want to bite them. And one woman came up to you afterwards and told you that when she gave birth to her child, she wanted to eat the child, as if it was the same impulse. So instead, she went out and bought a suckling pig the same size as her baby and ate the whole thing. Rona's response, right. And they say artists are insane. I didn't witness this exchange, but I was at that panel, and Rona stole the show. Rona's been stealing the show from the beginning. Her work remains among the most resonant that I've experienced over the entirety of my career as an art critic And this is not only because my very first published exhibition review was of an installation she did at the Sculpture Center in New York in 1988. I've now experienced Rona's work for more than 25 years, and I remain simultaneously freaked out and comforted by what have remained its most critical characteristics. Its ability to make material and even form appear as if they were psychologically self-aware in and of themselves, rather than merely representative or illustrative of such states of mind. Its comfort with brazenly straightforward, often ridiculous humor, and its anything but passive acceptance of what we can still call the human condition. In my opinion, the extent of her influence has yet to be fully appreciated. To give one specific example, I'm convinced, and I was there at the time, that Rona's early sculptures contributed directly to the turn that Bob Gober made in his work from the 80s to the 90s. And even when it's less direct, there's a provocative pathway from Rona's work to that of Charles Ray. And someday I'm going to write about all this. I wrote my Rona Pondick thesis statement in 1990, and it hasn't changed. Pondick's pieces release the things that have been repressed by reactivating them in shapes that exploit the formal in order to present the primal. This week, preparing this introduction here, I was flooded with memories of when I wrote that sentence. It made its first appearance in my final paper for Dr. Laurie Schneider-Adams' Art and Psychoanalysis seminar when I was still at the CUNY Graduate Center. I'm grateful to Dr. Schneider-Adams for what I now see was her recognition that I was rushing out of the doors of academia to get myself downtown with the artists. I didn't finish. I'm a runaway. I will also mention my CUNY mentor, Robert Pincus Witten, as he was also very important for Rona when she was an undergrad at Queens College, and he encouraged her to go to Yale for her MFA. Meeting Rona, and then, of course, her husband, the painter Robert Feintuck, who I was very honored to be able to host as chair of painting and drawing for a lecture he gave to the department last night. Meeting them at that time helped give me the courage to get out there and get on with it, to get off my ass, to work hard, and especially for all the students here tonight, I'm very confident that she will be able to do the same for each of you. So please join me in welcoming Rona Pondick.
Terry, I think you should just continue, because you're going to do a much better job than I will. So the first image I'm showing you is a piece called Angel. It's from '87. It's about 30 inches tall by 20 by 20 inches. And this piece, as well as the next piece called Lead Bed, which is the same year, is made of wood, bronze, lead, and satin pillow. It's about 72 inches long. This body of work was talked about, and I heard things and read things, and I thought to myself, this will cure me of ever fearing putting work out and not being able to control what people are going to say about it. Now, it's not to say that they were wrong, but I heard scatological, taboo, abject, and it really was a freeing experience, because I thought, if I can read this in the New York Times and everywhere else, what could they say about my work that's going to surprise me, upset me, or make me feel like I've exposed something about myself that is too exposed? So I'm a lover of materials. I love to move around with different materials, images. I get bored, I can't stand still, I get bored very easily. If someone said to me, as a young artist, you need to find one word to describe your work, I'm fucked. If they said to me, you have to brand yourself and make yourself repeat over and over, I'd slit my throat. I can't do that. So this is made in 1989. It's about 10 feet long, and the bottles are filled with white wax. Now, the other thing that I'm also going to say is that if I could tell you in words what my work is about, I wouldn't want to make it. I like for the imagery to be incredibly suggestive. I want it to be enigmatic. I want it to deal with contradiction. I want so many different things to happen. I want it to unfold slowly. I am interested in ugly beauty. I'm interested in something that repels and pulls you in at the same time, that makes you laugh and be uneasy simultaneously. Kafka's a huge, huge hero. I love the way in the Metamorphosis, which I must have read 15 times by now, I flip from realizing he's dealing with things that make you realize you're dealing with the real world, and it feels simultaneously witty and deadly serious and so disturbing that you want to just like run away. And I love all of that. And if I get all that in a piece, I'm thrilled. So this is milk, and each of the mounds of breasts are made out of wax, plastic, and Bounty paper towels. The next image is not coming. Okay. So this is a detail of the surface. And this is Milkman. This is 1989. This was in a private collection, and it was loaned to a museum show. And when the curators opened up the crate, they realized that the pillow was filthy, and they thought, oh my God, somebody destroyed the piece, and so they got conservation to clean the piece. And I show up at the opening, and I flip out, and I go to instead of going to the curator, I go to the bathroom, I take my shoes off, I run the bottom of my shoes under the sink, I take my shoes, I take the shoes off the pillow, and I start rubbing my wet shoes into the pillow. And let me tell you, that caused some commotion at the museum. And this is 1989, and it's called Souls. It's wax, it's stainless steel, wool, plastic, and shoes. Now, something that I didn't say at the beginning is if you have a question, just shout it out. I don't feel like you have to wait to the end if you do have a specific question. You're going to see it was very hard for me to figure out what to show you. I'm showing you a range of work that spans almost 30 years. And it was very hard to edit and figure out what to leave in, what to edit out. And the images are going to change a lot. You're going to see a lot of different material changes. And if you have a question, it might just work better if you just shout it out. So the counterpoint of Souls is Pump. And it's made of wax, plastic, newspaper, and its dimensions are 29 inches high by 33 by 37 inches. Now, about the time that I was making this work, I was in a museum show, and a curator said to me, "We need an artist statement." And I hate artist statements. I loathe artist statements. And I kept saying, I don't want to do this. and I kept getting phone call after phone call, you gotta do this, we have to go to press, we have all the other artist statements. And I do things impulsively sometimes. And I start writing, no, 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 and I shove it through the fax machine. And then I think, oh my God, I just alienated this curator. And I get a fax back saying, you're brilliant. And I'm like standing there scratching my head, and I just said, doesn't she get what I just did? And I thought, what the hell, go with it. So this got published, and it led into other artist statements of me saying, no, 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 no. Again, it's not advancing. Could you advance it? Not possible? So this is the detail of the shoe piece. And you can see that the wax is seeping through all of the New York Times that is covering the surface. And the next image is of Chairman. So this is covered with Spider-Man comics. It's done in 1990. Its height is about 17 inches high. It's got, obviously, adult shoes on it. My husband and I have nicknames for these chairs. We call them butt chairs. And the reason is that where you would sit, I turn the behinds into a butt. And this is Love Seat. Instead of Spider-Man comics, she has lace covering the surface, and the two outer shoes are adult patent leather shoes, and the center is a Mary Jane. And you can imagine what was written about this piece. Now, this is Mound. And Terry, you stole one of my favorite stories. This was a horrible moment for me because I'm sitting on a panel, this is 91, and someone asks me the most obvious question, and you heard the story, so I don't need to repeat it, but I panicked. I didn't think when I was making these pieces that someone would ask me why I'm using teeth. Now, that's not a deep question. And I did panic, and I can't believe I told an audience this size what I told them. But what I really couldn't believe was when this blue-haired, suited lady who came up to me and poker face said what she said, I was undone. So Mound is made out of chattering teeth, and yes, it does say in the middle, is like a fart. There are times where I saw parts of titles of things and I would leave them in specifically because I liked the kind of play that it made with the image. This is about 19 inches high by 42 inches by 15 inches. Now, this has another interesting story. So this is a piece that's in 500 parts. Each of the, what I call heads, are roughly about 3 inches in diameter. There are 500 of them. Yes, I'm obsessive. I made each one by hand. They're made with what's called rubber rotting Halloween teeth. I only could make 2 pieces with these teeth because they weren't a popular item and they discontinued them. And when I called and said, but I like them, and they said, well, if you make a big enough order, we'll make them. But they wanted 20,000. And I said, well, that's a little big for me. So from this point, I went from using Halloween teeth to making my own teeth. But how this piece got made, I think is really kind of interesting and unusual for me. I was invited to do an installation at the Beaver College, which is right outside of Philly. And the curator that was writing the essay for the brochure said to me, we're going to go to a Renoir bathers show. And I thought, ew. Now, I had such a visceral response when I went to the show. Put my teeth on edge, I hated it. I felt it in my body in such a strong way. And for weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about this piece. And this piece is called Little Bathers. I feel like this embodies, in a visceral way, what I felt when I was looking at the bathers of Renoir. Now, I've used teeth in my work for a long time, a lot of different materials, and I love how it goes from something like the pink and the bubblegumness of it to a piece like this, which is in '97. Little Bathers was 7 years earlier. And the teeth have been in pieces where they were bite-sized, so you could put the teeth actually in your own mouth. And I would play with the scale and how the things would scatter in a space. This piece called Dirt Head was made specifically for the Johannesburg Biennale. And it was made for it in a kind of convoluted way where my gallery at the time said, there is no way you're sending an existing piece. These big exhibitions, the work either gets stolen or it gets destroyed or it's never returned. Make something in a material that's going to fall apart. The piece still exists, it's in perfect condition, so I didn't succeed. But what's interesting is this piece was exhibited at the Johannesburg Biennale. It then went to the Groningen Museum and was in an exhibition about death. Then it went to the Rupertinum, where there was a one-person show. And then it went to the Lyon Biennale, where it was in front of the section about genetics. And it kept traveling, and every single time that it traveled, it was written about in a completely different way, as though the piece had no relationship to what it was and how it was written about in other locations. Now, this is at the Johannesburg Biennale. It's put out with a ton of earth, and the heads are spilling out from it. What was amazing to me in South Africa is that nobody wanted to touch this. Black magic wouldn't go near it. I couldn't get a single person to help me. They were fine putting the earth out, but I had to put every one of these individual pieces, all 400, myself, because they refused to touch them. Now, what is even more interesting is this is in Austria. Now, I have a ton of earth, and I have a crew, and I had to go talk to the director of the museum about something for about an hour. And I said, you know, put it against the wall. Now, I come back an hour later, and I was like, whoa, this is the neatest mound of earth I've ever seen in my life. It looked like they put it out with teaspoons. And I thought, I'm not going to mess with this. I'm going to leave it alone because it says something interesting about the place and how the piece exists in the place. So this is called Untitled Tree, and this piece started in '95. And there are these collectors that have an outdoor sculpture collection, and they're really great. They have invited a lot of artists to make their first outdoor pieces, and they truly just said, do whatever you want. And at first I was like, I don't want to be stupid, but I don't know if my work makes sense outside. I don't know if the imagery makes sense. I don't know if the materiality makes sense. And I really started thinking about the fact that for me, 90% of the time when I see work outdoors, I think that nature is way more interesting than anything. And if I see sculpture outdoors, I usually think the nature is more interesting and compelling. And so I started thinking, if you can't beat them, join them. So I asked if I could take a tree from their property and use it to make a sculpture. So what I did, and you can see it as I'm flipping through these images, I took the tree, I cut it apart, I simplified it, I put it back together again, very reduced and spare, so that it read in a very simple and linear way. And when I installed it back in its location, I really wanted it to almost just disappear. So from a distance, you don't know there's a sculpture there. But as you slowly kind of spend time with it, you start to realize that there's something wrong with this picture. And what's wrong with this picture is it's a metal tree. It's cast out of aluminum, and there are all these heads underneath it. Now we're moving forward. This is in 2001. Now I'm going to jump all over the place now, so I might fast forward 10 years, back 10 years, bear with me, the dates are going to go all over the place. I'm trying to make more of imagistic links rather than a chronological linear path for you. And you can see that the complexity of the tree is starting to get much more expressive and much more detailed and fine. All of my trees are fictions. They're not trees that are just taken and cast. I have bins and bins and bins of parts of things, and I'll put them together like erector sets. So it might be from 1,000 parts that I make my trees. And when I'm making them, my husband, who gave a talk yesterday, can tell you, I'll spend thousands of hours merging things, modeling them to make it look like nature made it, and I had nothing to do with it. And he said, don't you think that's a little weird that your hand is so in it, in the end, it looks like your hand's not in it at all? And I said, no, I love that. So I'm going to show you the detail of it, and this is where it's living outdoors. I'm showing a couple of times pieces where they're indoors and then where they wind up outdoors, because I feel like they feel very different and you experience them in very, very different ways. Something that is really important to me is, and probably the most important thing, is that you feel my work viscerally in your own body. I don't necessarily care if you can say what you see and why you like or don't like what you see, but I want you to have an emotional and visceral response where you feel it in your own body. And so now I'm making a big jump forward, going almost 10 years forward, and this is called Head and Tree. Around 1998, I started working with hybrid images, taking my head and marrying it, or my arms or legs, with animals or trees. So this is an exhibition in the Netherlands that was in 2009. And you can see that it's installed in this really big pond. It's a little out of focus, but the next image should show you more clearly what you're looking at. Now, this is a piece that kind of has a very intimate relationship with me. because in 2006, I had a really awful thing happen where I was almost paralyzed. My ligament on my spinal cord calcified, and I had 19 hours of neurosurgery. And my spine has a lot of titanium replacing it, and I had to learn how to walk and use my hands all over again. Now, this is going to sound strange to you, but it was much easier when I started working to do big movements rather than smaller movements. So I was working bigger rather than smaller because it was physically easier for me to handle neurologically. But I also think the image very clearly has spinal relationships. Honestly, I found myself in intensive care, and I was so drugged, I was, on another planet. But I started saying to myself, I have to make work in my head to survive. And I'm not a conceptual artist, and I never thought I would be able to do this because I feel like I think with my hands. When I'm working, I literally understand what I'm doing as I'm physically manipulating the material. This piece I made in intensive care in my head, and it was the first thing, and I could not spit it out fast enough. And this is a detail of it. So again, the whole thing's a fiction. And that's the root system and the bottom of it. The tree is about 10 feet tall, and the canopy is 54 by 58 inches wide. And this is it installed indoors. Now, a lot of these trees are made by what's called a direct burnout process. This is made with a mold. So it doesn't have the same kind of crazy making. And what I mean by that is that, this is the wrong image, but on the burnout trees, and I'll explain that to you later, why it's so complicated. This is going back to 1998. This is the very, very first piece where I combined my head with an animal. And when I made the mold, or had the mold made on me, I didn't want to use straws. I don't know if anyone's ever done a life cast, but if a little bubble had formed, I could have killed myself. But it was so important to me that the detail in the face be perfect, I didn't want the straws to alter the shape of my nose. And I was very lucky that I had a pad of paper on my lap, because as the mold is being made on me, I started getting a choking reflex, and I had to write, "Cut, I'm choking." 2 hours into this, the sensory deprivation was unbelievable. And I was writing, "Get this fucking thing off of me, I'm losing it." And I meant losing it. Now, from 98 to now, every single head that I've used has come from this life cast, and I've altered it by either removing the hair, removing the skin texture, removing a feature, possibly changing its scale, and that's where the computer technology comes in, where I've either reduced or increased the size of it. Now, also in dog, I'm going to show you another view of it. This is from the back view. This is yellow stainless steel. So the way this was made was I'm working with a foundry who's both an engineer and a metallurgist. And he loves to tinker as much as I do, so we're a really bad combination. That means we're constantly trying things and never finishing anything. But this was made by us putting the piece in a kiln after it was totally finished, firing it so it was red hot, and depending on the temperature, it produced a certain color. What we didn't realize was it would never stop changing. So this is an addition of 6, and no matter where it is in the world, there are no 2 that have the same color because the physical environment affects it. I don't know why this is not advancing. Could you try advancing it? Oh, there it is. So this is an exhibition that I did in 2009, and it spanned 7 years in the making, and it was at the Worcester Art Museum. And they let me go into their collection and pick pieces from every department I wanted, no matter what time period or place geographically. And I honestly felt a huge need to do a show about making. If you look at work, a lot of the image or the material, that's affected by the tools and technology of the time that it was made. If you look at the history of the image of the human being, it's been in existence from the cave paintings and in sculpture from the Neolithic period all the way to now. As long as we are alive and human, we are going to look to represent ourselves and have a reflection of ourselves. And it's going to continue. It's never going to stop. And that continuum was something that I wanted to deal with in the exhibition. I took all didactics and removed them. There were no dates. There was no, like, that's Middle Kingdom, that's pre-Columbian, that's my piece, and then that's a Thai Buddha. I didn't have any of those specific names or dates present. I divided the show into 3 different groupings: how gesture and posture makes meaning, how hair translates in sculpture, and the repeated image. And I wanted the visual to just stand on its own. No description, no statement, no words, just the visual. And this is Fox. And Fox is made in 1998 and 99. So I'm talking about these animal-human images, and I know that you've read a lot about the computer technology that I've used. And what's interesting is a lot of times my making is using so many different ways of making and combining them that 90% of the time how they're written about is completely wrong. A lot of times people talk about the computer technology with these pieces. There is none at all. The bodies are modeled. The human parts are all removed from my body through the life casts. Why I love stainless steel? Looks like quicksilver. It looks like it's in flux. It's moving, and I love that. And that's just another view of it. And this is Cougar, same 98, 99. It's 8 by 17 by 43 inches. And this is just another detail of it. And this is Untitled Animal. Now I'm going to show you very quickly. That's the same exact piece. Comes out of the same mold that came out of. Difference, material. This is carbon. Rust is formed by me just spraying water over it. And I love seeing the two pieces together because to me they look like they're two completely different pieces. The size of it is 6.5 by 44 by 21.5 inches. Again, still no computer technology. This is marmot. It's made out of silicone rubber. It's 6 inches by 30 inches by 21 inches. And the next piece, monkeys, is where the computer technology starts. Now, this piece started in '98 when the first dog piece started. And when I was working on this, I wanted to reduce my head, and it's an odd thing to know, but my forehead to my chin is 8.5 inches. I wanted to reduce it down to 4.5 inches. I can tell you the size of all the different heads that I've reduced things to or increased them to. It's an odd thing to know, but I know my body size. My shoe size is a little different, but to know your head size is a little weird. I tried modeling it. I bought all these crazy materials that called itself reduce it, no warpage, no problem, lie, lie, lie. I'm having a friend who's a physicist to the studio in '98, and he says, oh, you want to use reverse prototyping? And I'm like, well, what's that? And so he was the one who hooked me up with some scientists. And I then started to try to scan my life cast. And it was supposed to take 3 weeks. And what was supposed to take 3 weeks took 1.5 years. Back in '98, to do a scan of the kind of resolution which meant points, and the way you scan is from point to point, the computers were constantly crashing. When I went to output it three-dimensionally, the same thing happened. So this piece moved very kind of slowly. But it felt really important to me to have all the body parts physically feel as though they were removed from me, like Roman death masks are. And the parts that are not human be incredibly modeled. And if you notice, there's no gender. They're not male, they're not female. In this piece, I almost feel like it's a stop action. I imagine when I was working on this that I wanted to get a kind of Baroque movement. And it felt like the way to do that for me was for the figures to feel as though someone said as they were moving, stop. And that's the feeling I wanted with the piece. The piece is the only piece where I've only done half the edition. And the reason for this is that it takes 1.5 years to make each of the edition. It's a very complicated thing to get the pieces to be welded together, married together. Every time I'm putting it together, because when you cast, the metal warps and shifts, and so the dimensions between the pieces that have been made vary sometimes 2 and 3 feet. And I should tell you the piece in its dimensions is 41 inches by 66 by roughly 80 to 90 inches. And this is one of the pieces installed at the New Orleans Sculpture Garden. Now, big shift down to a piece called Pine Martin, which was done in the year 2000 to 2001. The piece is 9 inches by 18 inches by 6 3/4 inches. It's my odalisque. Those of you that were at Robert's talk last night saw that he had a painting of himself as an odalisque. And so you can kind of see that our studios have been side by side for God knows how long, 35 years maybe? And so how could you have your studios next to each other and not affect each other's imagery? So Pine Martin, in that exhibition called Metamorphosis of an Object, here it is next to an Etruscan urn, and above it is a terracotta. When I was working on this exhibition, I had a wonderful exchange with the curator, Susan Stoops, but she didn't understand why I wanted to use that little terracotta figure that was hanging above it. And I said, you gotta trust me. I really think it's a special piece. Now, anytime you move a piece in a museum, conservation has to review it. And they pull it off this hideous velvet backing, and they discover there's a Beccafumi signature on it. So now it turns out that it could be a rare Italian Mannerist piece, and there were a lot of scholars trying to authenticate it. And it was kind of thrilling to be in that position to discover something like that. And obviously this is part of my gesture posture clusters. And this is the backside of Pine Martin. So this is Ram's Head, and again, this is done with the same kind of heat treatment. It was done in the year 2000. If you look at the earrings, the head's reduced down in size, and it's using the computer technology that I spoke to you about. And this is a detail. This is called Crimson Queen Maple. Now, I was saying to you, direct burnouts. This is called suicide casting. Why? Because forget about the fact that it's broken into God knows how many parts that have to be put back together. When you're breaking it out of the shell, a quarter of the piece didn't cast, what do? So it's like the craziest thing in the world to try to do, to try to figure out, well, how did then you put this thing back together again? So it's been a kind of interesting journey trying to figure out how to do this. This is a detail of it. The tree spans 15 feet. Growing off are hundreds and hundreds of these small heads. And this is the same piece installed at a show at Sonnabend. And here it's at the Mori Museum in Tokyo. I love when I watch my work talked about in different ways. This was in a big exhibition about science, and it was the last piece at the end of the show, and they believed that this piece meant hope for the future. Now, if you understand Japanese philosophy, it makes sense. And this is Pussy Willow Tree. Again, the same insane way of casting. This was a private foundation in the south of France, and Pussy Willow Tree was made in 2001. It's 80 inches tall, 50 inches by 64 inches, and this is just a detail. And here it is in the winter, so you can see how the material changes through these seasonal changes. So, obvious. I want to take it indoors. I want to make it small. This is Erotatia bufoxula. And again, totally made up. It's not a real tree. This is double azalea, 2006 to 2007. I went nuts with the root system because I was having trouble with it standing in the bowl that I made for it. This is painted bronze, and at the ends of the tree are tiny, tiny hands. The whole hand is maybe about a half an inch. The size of this is 30 inches by 27 by 36. And this is just a side view of it. And here's Geely. You can see that I like to push things as far as I can. And I was trying to see how complex I could make it, how fine I could make it without losing it. And what I mean by losing it, that it could still come together in a way that, for me, visually not only made sense, but that technically I could handle. And it was a real stretch. This was the piece that cured me, where I thought, enough, I went too far. So you can see in the detail the hands, and what I'm doing with the paint is that some of it's a transparent paint, and some of it I'm using where the paint is almost applied dry, so that you can see through to the texture of the tree. Now, this is dwarfed white jack, and this is from 2010 to 2012. The whole tree was modeled first. This is a tree where I used a mold, and I stupidly agreed to work with a computer company that was dying to work with me, because I'm a great guinea pig and I figure things out for these companies. Even though I'm a Luddite, and every time I touch my computer at home and I make it do everything I can't understand, nor can my husband understand, when I'm working with the computer technology, I figure a lot of things out that other people can't figure out. So go figure. So this tree is small, and it's 35 inches by 23 inches and 18 inches high. And I thought, if I have to cut this into molds, I'm gonna have to make 400 molds. And they said, well, we could scan it, and then we can have it produced where you can then burn it out in bronze. And like an idiot, I believed them. Be suspicious when people say to you that the computer can do everything that you can't do by hand. If I couldn't have remade this piece by hand, I would have been screwed. I would have lost the piece. The computer so screwed everything up, it was a nightmare. Now, I also wanted to do this in porcelain because I wanted it to feel like bone. But I also knew that if I made it in porcelain, it would never get even further than coming out of the mold, and it would break. So I started experimenting to see if I could find a way to paint it to look like porcelain. And there's a detail of it. And this is just dwarfed yellow pine, another detail. This is going back a little bit, and I'm really showing it to you because this piece nearly killed me. It's called Pyracantha. I was 3 weeks away from a deadline to ship it to Europe, and we broke it out of the shell. It was a direct burnout. And I've lost sometimes 10%, 20%, 30%, 15% of the piece cast. And I was like, oh my God, where's the piece? And I'm like, what do I do? And so I said, we need to figure out how to make this out of welding rods. I was lucky I had extra heads that I had cast so that I could go backwards and remake the whole thing again. And this is what was the result. And this is muskrat. So this is 2002 to 2005. My index fingers and my head is probably no larger than an inch in size. This is the view from the side of it. And here it is at the Worcester exhibition, again, Metamorphosis of an Object. And I love this grouping. Its two ends are pre-Columbian pieces, 500 BC. The one on the far left is literally 1.5 inches in height. It's got little pigtails. The one on the far right is about 4 inches. And then you've got a Mesopotamian cyclotic on either side of muskrat and a South Indian sculpture that's about 4 inches in height. And I think the postures of these are so communicative. They say so much to me. And this is Mouse, 2002 to 2006. I got very interested in how hair translates in sculpture. And when I was making this piece, when I say frustration, I mean really frustration. At one point, I pulled my saw out and I cut it into 5 pieces. And Robert walked into my studio and he said, "My God, what did you just do?" And I just said, "I was so frustrated, I couldn't stand it anymore. I've got to throw it out." And he said, "Well, maybe you might want to leave for the day and come back tomorrow and revisit this." And I was happy that I did, put it back together, and continued working on it. The way I solve issues for myself when I'm working is I run to the museum and I look for how other artists in either similar materials or similar ways that I can look at how they made something, figure out what I need to do to resolve something in my own work. At the time, I was looking a lot at Gothic hair. And I don't know if you know what I mean by that. I'm talking about artists like Tilman Riemenschneider. And this is just a detail of the hair section at the Worcester Art Museum, and it's the back end of Mouse next to a Roman bust. Now, of course, hair can be also literal hair. So this is called Monkey with Hair. And when I made this, I had the help of my conservator because I needed to figure out how to get the hair to move on the body so it looked like it was growing rather than just glued on. And we found a company in Massachusetts that made hair for monster movies in Hollywood. And so we could make this sort of stretchy backing so that I could cut it and glue it onto the metal body and have it look like it's just very naturally growing off the piece. And you can see there its shiny little butt. Let me see, it's 14 inches high by 44 inches long by 32 inches wide. And now I'm jumping way forward to 2011 to 2013. This is Prairie Dog. It's a very tiny piece. It's 4 by 8 by 4 inches. And it's my head contemplating my pinky. And this is Otter. Otter was made 2002 to 2005. It's about 30 inches high. And here it is in a grouping at the same exhibition where its far end is a small bird goddess from Greece. Then next to it is an oceanic sculpture, and then to the right is a pre-Columbian terracotta turtle shell. And that's just another view of Otter. And that's its hand. You're going to see this hand gets repeated and used in varying sizes the way the head is used in varying sizes. Now, I've got to tell you, for me, I really think of the computer technology as no different than a hammer or a saw. You can't live without a hammer and a saw, but I'm not going to just stand there and hammer things all day because I like it. The computer does very specific things, and the specific things that it does well, it does really beautifully. I use it for prototyping, and I'm not sure if you know what I mean by that. I can increase or decrease the size of something, and then make a mold off of it, and then use it endlessly. I know as soon as people hear that I've used a computer, it made the entire thing, and it's not the case. So this is a piece called Cat. This is my hand, life size. I took the life cast, I scanned it, and the hand is 18 inches long now. I wanted to increase the size of it. I wanted to change the shape of it. If you notice, your hand does this. My hand there does the opposite, because I took the skin off, reshaped it on the computer, put the skin back on, and then joined it in with the body that I modeled for it. Now, anyone that knows about computer builds knows that, you see here, this is called computer puddling. So all of that was over the entire surface of the hand. And what I did was remove it to the beginning of the fingers and left it on the fingers from that point forward. And this is the last image I'm going to show you. And the piece is called Ginkgo. And the hands in this were the life-size hands that almost every hand in all the trees came from, as well as the otter. And what's interesting is you can see how bad I am about deadlines. I started this in 2007. There were 2 of these pieces, and they were supposed to be at the entrance of the Worcester Art Museum. This got finished in 2012, and its partner is still in progress. So I didn't make my deadline. It's the last piece where I've made it, and I have not finished a piece since 2012 because I've changed materials again. And there's a huge amount of experimenting that's been going on, a lot of throwing out of things. And I'm hoping soon some things are going to get finished, but I never want to be told I can't change my work whenever I want, however I want, or need to, because I think that's one of the greatest gifts you get as an artist, the freedom to make what you want. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions? Do you want to?
Hi. This is really loud. I've had practice with mold making and casting, but I'm looking to get into foundry. I'm also a lover of stainless steel. Do you have any tips or suggestions, or good to know before getting into foundry?
Stainless is a very, very complicated material to work with for a lot of reasons. So the melting point of bronze is 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Stainless, 3,000. So one, you have to be able to get those high temperatures. You need a very, very good vacuum system so that it pulls it through Otherwise, you get very bad castings. And chasing stainless is so labor intensive. To chase a bronze, the comparison is whatever it is in bronze, it's going to take triple the hours in stainless. So you have to want to really work with the material. I will suggest if you're going to do it, use what's called 316L, which is a surgical grade, so you have less rusting. It's a high chrome content. Anyone else? Yep. Of course, this is a commercial world where everyone's supposed to be branded. Are you kidding? Well, when I was younger, I didn't know that that was a bad thing to do. And I've always done whatever I've wanted to do. I'm very contrary. When I made the shift to the hybrid pieces, I had an exhibition, and the owner of the gallery took me out to lunch, and he said, "Oh, we have to schedule another show. This was such a huge success." And I said, "Yeah, but I'm wanting to experiment, and I don't know what I'm going to do, and I just need to throw myself in a different direction. What it is, I don't even know yet." And I thought he was going to kill me. We come back to the gallery, his father is present, and he said, "Oh, you're depressed. You're like Rothko and Oldenburg. They always got depressed after a show." And I said, "I'm not depressed, but what I am is pissed at your son because I told him this, and this is what he said to me." And he said, "If you don't want to be like those old farts and repeat yourself over and over and over again, go for it." But he also made it sound like if you want to jump off a mountain and commit suicide, go for it. So I went for it. I go for it. I like to do it.
I'm really fascinated when you mentioned that you think with your hands.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious, and thank you for sharing parts of your process, but I'm really curious what happens between pieces?
Who the hell knows? Listen, I must have 30 pieces going all at the same time. And, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I'm obsessing on this piece that's 6 years. And then I introduce another piece and another piece and another piece. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if I made it in this material. And it's like nothing's ever finished in my head. Nothing's ever good enough. I'm too critical. I'm my worst enemy. You can see I like to work on lots of different things. All these images are coming together at the same time. I have a very, fertile mind. And if I had the ability to really make everything that I could think of making, and I mean by my hands, because I'll start working on something, I'll cut it up, and that piece will turn into 6 different pieces. And I can't even remember how it happened. I happened to have an assistant at one point that was taking photographs without telling me. And she showed me one time something that had mutated 15 times into different pieces. And it was interesting because I thought, ooh, I'm glad you did that, because here's another 10.
Yeah, sure. I guess to follow up on what the previous question and what you just said, how does the editing process then happen? When do you know when to stop, or when do you know, if it's never finished? And I feel similarly, if it's never finished, then how does that happen? Or
How did that happen?
Yeah.
I do get to the point. I mean, what I do is I drive Robert crazy. And I ask him to look at things endlessly because I really trust him. But then when I know it's finished, and I don't need to ask him, I know it's really finished. Now, that doesn't mean if I see it 5 years later that I don't want to put my hands back on it.
You've been very expressive of the solution that you found, you've come across. Is there anything that still vexes you?
Everything. No, I'm not joking. You know, when I'm working, I can criticize something to death. I want to make it more rich. That means flip it back and forth so it has more possible readings. The more I can get in a piece, the happier I am. When it's real superficial and simple, which is what, you know, the commercial world wants, I'm not happy. I want complexity. I think life is complex, you know? Life's not simple. It's really layered and difficult and problematic, and I want my work to reflect that. Any other questions?
I'm wondering, obviously, the water operating project that you did, I'm wondering what you took from that whole project, and if it may have ignited a desire or an interest in pursuing a territorial project.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a great question. Dowd actually wrote about and saw the piece, saw the show at the Worcester Art Museum and wrote this piece that I just love about it. I would love the opportunity to do that exhibition again, but you know, I just got invited by the Met to take part in what's called an artist project, because the Met, like the museum here, was founded by artists. I didn't know this. And so the director now is trying to pull as many artists in as possible to engage us with the collection. So he came up with this idea about asking artists to come in and pick a piece that you love, and they filmed us talking about the objects that we loved. But what was amazing to me, I picked a piece, and a curator actually said, what could a contemporary artist have to say about this work and add to it? And I thought, what a dope. But, you know, it would have to be a special museum, because I've learned curators of different departments all think art ended, and there's no interesting art made after the period that they're in love with. I'm not joking. And they all hate each other. So the idea of working together would be a nightmare. So it would have to be a small museum like the Worcester Museum that has an encyclopedic collection that would let me do what I did there. It was truly, it was a dream project. I would love the opportunity to do it again. I learned, I can't begin to tell you, I could talk for hours to you about what I've learned from it, because it was truly, truly educational. It was also thrilling for me because, you know, there are people who know their museum collections so intimately because they are so involved with them. And there were people who came up to me and said, you know, you reinstalled pieces where I'm seeing these pieces for the first time. And I thought that was really interesting and wonderful. Yeah, no, I would love to do it. I also would love to do it with someone who worked in a different medium with me, doing a similar thing where it was not just sculpture, but maybe, you know, works on paper or painting where a similar thing was happening and we were weaving it in together, because I think it could be an interesting dialogue, you know?
Hi. I was wondering if you could say a few words about your choice of animals.
I can't hear you.
I was wondering if you could say a few words about the animals that you choose to join yourself to.
You know, it's hard. I mean, if you notice, the titles are not all that expressive. They're pretty dog, fox, you know, they're kind of flat-footed in their titles. I'm picking them because of either possibly their scale. What I love about these animals, like the tree, if you see an animal in the wild, out on the street, if you see a cat, for example, in this room, you take the cat, you put it outdoors, the scale doesn't change. But the scale does change, but your brain doesn't let the scale change of it. I think that's really, really interesting. And so part of my fascination with the animals is that I can put them in many, many different physical settings, and the scale stays the same. That doesn't happen often with sculpture. Think about it. I've seen Sarahs that look so, you know, terrifying indoors, and then I see it outdoors, and it's inert. And I love Sarah, and I've thought about this deeply. What happens with the brain? Why is it that when you know something, it locks in how you experience it physically?
Hi, so the piece about the tree in the lake.
Oh, head and tree, yeah.
So I noticed that the tree is not necessarily like, it doesn't have that sort of sheen quality that a lot of the other sculptures do, and the water does.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense when you said that the sheenness sort of makes the movement, but I'm wondering about the opaque.
The matte.
The matte parts, yes, correct. The matte parts of the sculpture, are they supposed to be static, like opposite of it, or?
I'm just looking for how the surfaces collide into each other. I mean, if you remember, the head was very shiny. And what did happen is you could be 100 feet away from it, and it read like a bullet. So you would read that shiny part. Even though it covered a very small area, it was highly reflective and really read in a very, very strong way. I'm looking to make contrasts between these surfaces. And so sometimes there are big areas of matte against the shiny surfaces, and sometimes they're you know, the opposite.
How do you ultimately decide to orient your pieces, and how much of the time do you put into it, and how they'll be displayed?
In terms of how they're displayed?
Yes.
Oh my God, I have pieces where I have dog, for example, and that piece, I mean, it's amazing. It's been exhibited in 25 different museum settings, and I have installed it every single time differently. Different heights on the floor, different pedestals, and I just love endlessly playing with it. Maybe I'm Brancusi reincarnated, I don't know. No, seriously, because I like seeing it at different heights. I like how you experience it when it's on the ground. I've given curators the license where I say, here are some options, you pick. You can do it this way, this way, this way, or this way, depending on how you're using it in the exhibition.
It's kind of a shift, but your work is really pictorial in my mind, and it has a quality of shading, painting, and drawing. So I'm wondering if that was a part of your past.
Oh, I'm drawing a lot. You know, Terry actually asked me, are you including any drawings? And I was like, oh my God, just in the sculpture, I could have done 5 different talks. I didn't show you any of the site-specific installations that I've done. I edited out so much. I could do a talk just of drawings.
Do people show your drawings, or do you actually separate them so?
Sometimes I'm very private about them and I just don't want to show them to people, and sometimes I do show them, but not that often, but occasionally I do. Anything else? Okay, great.